The Planning London Datahub is a new interactive website that includes real-time digital information about all development proposals across London. And to discuss this innovative new tool, I'm joined by Jules Pipe, Deputy Mayor for Planning Regeneration Skills, and Sarah Bevan, who's Programme Director for Planning and Development at London First. So Jules, let me start by asking you, why is the Data Hub so important to London's future?
Well, it's a real step forward, big step forward in terms of using data in the planning process. For the very first time, we can see the whole, process of all planning applications in London from the very moment that they're validated until they receive the decision. People in the sector are used to the old London Development Database. And it's that received data through from boroughs, sometimes months late, whereas the new system is happening in real time. It includes all applications, not just the ones that are approved. And it's got a lot more rich data, very important data about planning applications. If you wanted to know about the amount of affordable housing in the initial proposals, how they change over time during the consideration of an application, the breakdown of tenure, bedrooms, floor space, environmental data, such as the urban greening score that's now in the London plan, the infrastructure requirements of the development. And I can't emphasize enough, this is live data. We can see how change is happening in the city as it actually happens. And it all ties together really important data from the local planning authority back office systems as well. And it ties that in with information supplied by the applicant.
Yes, now I've had a look at some of the housing information. It's going to be incredibly valuable. So Sarah, London First has talked about data being at the core of the city's post-COVID recovery plan. So this hub is very timely, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Last year, we created the London Data Commission to bring together the public sector and business to discuss how we can better share public-private data and how we can make better use of it, and then how it can better inform policy decision-making. And what is absolutely clear is that if we make better use of our data, then it will put us in a much better position to recover from COVID. We've got the potential to access really fine-grained real-time data that will give us insight into people's new work patterns, how we're travelling around the city, but also the progress of construction and delivery. And the London Data Hub is going to be a really important element in that wider data picture, particularly because it gives the real-time information.
And Jules, can you tell me what sort of things is this data going to be used for?
Well, I think all people involved in planning the city and development are all going to find many uses for it, ones that we can think of now, and I think uses that we haven't even thought of yet. For the GLA, obviously plan monitoring, the KPIs in the new London plan. But for people who aren't planners, simply being able to see where and how our city is growing is going to be invaluable. For demographers, obviously the data is going to be very useful for preparing future population estimates. Public service planning as well, hospitals, health, policing, fire, schools, social care, really, really valuable to local authorities. Monitoring of environmental data as well, the new requirements in the plan. For developers as well, it'll enable them to monitor decisions that are made by the authorities. It'll help them pull together evidence that they want to use in their submissions, in plan making processes with the boroughs. It'll certainly help them in supporting their planning applications, knowing what is going on around them. And as I say, new uses, I think it could be absolutely limitless, and new insights into how the city is changing are going to be invaluable.
And how do you see it fitting in with the wider digitization of the planning system?
Well, of course, this is just one of the many things that the GLA are doing in this space at the moment. One of them, the IMA, the infrastructure mapping application, is proving to be a great collaboration tool for infrastructure providers. We've got the National Underground Asset Register as well, which the GLA was a pilot to create a data set of just what actually is under our streets. You know, if it just saves one life from a utility strike, that's worth the investment. But it will be saving many lives. But beyond that kind of very immediate practical application, it's invaluable. It's an invaluable tool for having contractors and utility providers to cooperate. So the two systems together are really changing the way infrastructure provision is delivered in the capital. So you've got positives, other digital positives like that, but probably more challenging for planning is, I think, is the context that we're operating in, which is the lack of accessible data in general. Planning authorities are often asked to make very difficult decisions, but with limited knowledge and information about, you know, what's going on the ground. I mean, innovation is happening in some of the business process areas of the planning system. You know, we've seen advances in how to make a planning application, how to ensure it's valid. We're all working on 3D modeling. But because of the barriers to data, you know, I think limited work's happening in the area of delivering insight into what is actually happening in reality on the ground. I mean, the market has been better at this, but providers in the market have often, you know, have data sets that planning authorities struggle to work with and corroborate as correct. So again, you know, we're back to not really being sure that we have the full picture. But on the positive, back to the positive, you know, this is a really big step, I think, for the planning system in London. You know, for the GLA, this project is going to lead, as I say, into a lot of new insights. I think eventually it will lead to a live SHLA, strategic housing land assembly numbers, which, of course, you know, having that full live land supply data for London and all its boroughs will be really valuable in future planning and really aid in the debates about housing need and housing supply. I think similarly for employment land as well, and industrial land, it will prove invaluable for planning and making the case for why it's valuable, why it's needed, where it's needed. And again, environmental monitoring as well. I think it's going to prove very valuable for that.
And Sarah, how do you see this linking in with the wider changes to the planning system, which are coming down the line?
Well, if the government introduces its proposals for the longer term reforms that were set out in the white paper last year, there's going to be much more emphasis on stakeholders engaging earlier in the planning process. So for local communities and the development industry to have access to this real-time data will make sure that those discussions are much better informed. The fact that it's available in such a transparent and user-friendly way, and also those stakeholders going forward will be able to monitor what's actually being delivered on the ground as a result of the policies that they've helped to shape. But also in the shorter term, you know, with all the proposals to introduce further permitted development rights, the Datahub provides the first opportunity to actually record prior approval data so that we can see when an intervention like that has been introduced, we can see exactly what the impact is on the ground and then help to refine policy to suit if it's needed.
This is open data. Why is that such an important aspect of the programme?
Well, I think it's particularly important when you consider what this data is about. It's absolutely right that this data belongs to everyone. It's not an asset of the GLA, but should enable everyone involved to see what's going on, base decisions that they have to make on a really wider spectrum of public data. And talking to the public, it'll enable them to see the decisions that are being made and how they impact their communities. There won't be arguments about between different sections of the process about what's being delivered. It will bring that valuable clarity. And so to aid this, we're publishing dashboards with the data that will really make it easy for people to interrogate that interrogate that data. Initially housing delivery, but subsequently we're going to introduce other operational parts of the dashboard that will enable people to kind of choose their data sets and be able to really dig down and create comparisons. And it removes another layer of complexity for planning, which of course is an obvious barrier, both for decision makers, but also for residents to understand the basis on which decisions are being made. Hopefully it will really contribute to a wider understanding of the decision-making process involved in planning. I mean, for the LPAs, I think crucially it's going to remove costly data management. Sort of about £750,000 are spent a year supply. Well, that used to have to be spent inputting the data to the old LDD. And whilst we haven't completely removed that yet, we're getting close. So effectively, that's £750,000 that will be able to be reinvested in what's important about planning and good design locally in the planning process, rather than wasting the money on in-house data entry. All that time saved in resourcing a sort of reporting process is really valuable. And obviously enabling decision makers to make decisions based on facts and quickly see how those decisions impact on the community. And I think for the planning industry, the removal of competing data sets from planning discussions, as I've said, cutting through those arguments, I think it will reduce costs for the industry. I think the shared insights, so that conversations are richer, help us tackle the challenges that we've got before us, and we, help us just focus on delivery, because we're not getting sidetracked on debates about the accuracy of data. And I think finally for innovators, I think time and again when we see data being made public and available, the tech sector comes in, imagines new useful ways of using it. So we'll see things like apps for neighborhood notification for householders, supply chain integration. It's got useful applications there, risk profiling, development opportunities, and the obvious one as well is site finding for developers and investors. So I think I think the tech sector and the app development community will find all sorts of opportunities with this data.
Yeah, lots of benefits there. So where are the key paybacks for the GLA, for councils and for Londoners?
Well, as I've said, the obvious one is saving the public purse a fair bit of money, but there are lots of others, like the faster decisions, enabling hopefully earlier delivery of housing, and crucially genuinely affordable housing. I think it'll enable people to make earlier interventions. I say that site finding, making sure that things are bringing forward, focus our energy on unlocking areas where schemes don't seem to be progressing. So again, dashboards will make that very, very easy in visual terms as well on maps. And again, back to innovation, I think new insight. I think we are confident. I think that we really will see things sort of liven up in how people can view the data and what they can do with it. I think it will really set imaginations going. I think there's an impact there regarding economic growth as well. Obviously, getting development moving brings jobs, accelerates that development process, and all that comes after that in filling developments. And as I say, innovators in the tech space, there'll be the knock on there with jobs, revenue, taxation. As I say, we know that there are a lot of SMEs out there who are interested in this, and climate change as well. I've mentioned the urban greening score, the energy requirements of developments, things like surface water management, and the impacts on drainage, potential flooding, flood risk. The data set has. Just sitting here, I keep thinking of more and more things that this could be used for and be a useful application.
And Sarah, how do you see developers benefiting from the Datahub?
Well, Jules already mentioned that they'll be able to monitor planning decisions in a particular area, and that will help inform their own scheme design and hopefully save time in the planning process. But I think more broadly, developers are going to be able to analyse emerging market trends, be that on a London or sub-regional or borough level, to help with their investment decisions and site acquisition decisions. And the transparency of the data is just going to bring more certainty. And as we all know, more certainty means more delivery, hopefully.
Finally, Jules, you've just recently published the new London plan. Is this announcement of the data hub linked to that?
It's a coincidence, really, because obviously we'd hoped the London plan would have been published a year ago, but after the delay with the Secretary of State, they have now coincided. So they were very much two separate streams of work, but obviously very much interlinked. This data hub, it will be the perfect way to monitor the KPIs in real time and report on them in real time. I think it'll be a proven invaluable tool, delivery tool for delivering the London plan, and that's what we want to see.
So the next one won't take quite so long.
Well, it'll be down to the future Secretary of State. I mean, the process always lasts a good 4 years under the current regulations and the processes it has to go through. It's a bit unfortunate that an extra year was needlessly added, but we got there in the end, and I'm pleased that we did, because there's a lot of rich material in the London plan. Yes, it's big, but it's all strategic, and where people think it's less than strategic, well, if we didn't do it, the boroughs would have to do it. So, you know, I think all the things that people argued about, should it have such an accent on climate change and energy, and I think the debate's moved on now. People post-COVID, I think we want to see great open spaces, great green spaces, well-built buildings. You know, it's the topic we're all talking about now in what hopefully is the wake of the pandemic, and really the plan is a good building guide for London.
Well, thanks very much, both of you. I think this is going to be a fantastic resource for planners and developers, councils, and for local communities, providing up-to-date picture of development in London, and gives the tools to all those involved in environmental change to make better informed decisions, which can only be a good thing. So thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.